When I was 19, I was married with 2 kids. My oldest son Jacob was 2, and the younger boy Tyler was about 1. We all lived in an apartment in a little tiny town. There were 4 apartments in our building. My mom lived in the front left-hand apartment, and we lived in the back upstairs one. We lived there peacefully until this night. In this tiny town, there's a woman named Leslie who suffers from many mental illnesses, including schizophrenia. She doesn't like people and prefers to be left alone. She often wanders the streets at all hours and seemed to particularly hate my younger son. If we passed her on the street, she would stare at him and burst into a curse word-fueled rant. We would just ignore her and continue on our way. So now that you know some backstory, let's get into what happened on this particular night. The boys had been in bed for a couple of hours and my husband and I had just gone to bed. I feel like I had just closed my eyes when I heard a noise from the front of the apartment. It kind of sounded like the toy box had been dumped, so I assumed one of the boys had gotten up. I hopped out of bed to see what they were up to. I knew if one was up, the other would soon be up, and that would result in a very long night. When I walked out of my room though, I was shocked to realize that the front door was standing wide open. Silhouetted by the porch light and hunched at my boy's bedroom door was Leslie. She was muttering to herself about the awful thing she was going to do to the little demon child. In one hand she held a screwdriver as she used both of her hands to jiggle the knob. Luckily the boy's door stuck when it was humid out, so there was a trick to opening the door. I knew and understood that Leslie is just sick and wasn't in her right mind, but I wasn't sure how to handle this whole situation. Clearly I didn't want her to turn her aggravated attention to me, but I needed to get her away from my boy's door. She just kept jiggling the handle and muttering about the demon child. I should mention at this point that Tyler was and is the most joyful kid I've ever known. Jacob has always been quiet and thoughtful, while Tyler is loud and smiles brighter than the sun. He will do big things to make someone else happy. Jacob also thrives on making people happy, but he does it in such small ways that you almost don't realize until you do. I was sure that there was literally no possible reason for her hatred of Tyler. I'm pretty sure it was just her mental illnesses speaking, but still, it was insane. Anyway, back to the story. Luckily my mom was walking home from the bar and she heard the crash, which now I know was my front door being smashed open. My mom had lived in this town longer than I had and had dealt with Leslie's outbursts several times before. So while I was trying to decide how to distract her from my boy's room, my mom was creeping up the stairs to my apartment. My mom stepped into the apartment and Leslie turned to look at her. My mom asked her what she was doing and she started crying and told my mom that she had to take care of him. They kept telling her that she had to. By this point my husband had woken up and called for help. The cops arrived and they escorted her away. They took her to her sister's house down the road. Fortunately her sister is under no illusions about her sister's condition. She knew that Leslie only got bad when she stopped taking meds and began drinking instead. So Leslie was taken to the hospital to get her stabilized and back on her meds. The family apologized and we moved before she was released from the hospital. The boys slept in my room until we did move, and for a while after that. Last I heard, Leslie's doing okay now. They think Tyler set her off because he resembled a baby that the family lost. Apparently when she saw him, she decided that her meds weren't working because she was seeing things again. So she stopped taking them and began drinking because she couldn't deal with seeing this baby everywhere. Maybe that's crap. Maybe it's true. I'm not really sure. We haven't seen her since, and her family works hard to keep people from spreading stories. Tyler is 18 now and still full of sunshine. Jacob is 19. We have 2 more kids and have been married for 20 years. It is still the scariest night of my life. I am forever grateful to my mom and that darn sticky door. Some quick backstory. I work at a gas station on a main route, and we see a lot of travelers passing through. Only one person works each shift, and it's a 24-hour store. We're short-staffed, so I agreed to an overnight shift. I'm female. I work in a state that's always had self-serve gas stations. So this guy comes in and I asked him if he needed any help. He says no. He's getting gas at the pump but needs to use the restroom. I go back to work on whatever invoices we got yesterday, The guy uses the bathroom and then goes back outside. About 5 to 7 minutes later, he comes back inside and tells me that he's confused about the pump. He directly says,
"You might have to come outside to help me."
Customers don't often say this. They usually just complain that it's not working, so I'm already feeling pretty weird about this guy. I shake it off because he looks like a nerd and I don't feel afraid of him really. I look at the register to see what error it came up with for this pump, and there's no errors. The register doesn't even say it was in use. Even if someone tries to pay and there's nothing wrong with their payment, it will at least say payment timed out. But literally, it had no sign of him trying to use it before asking me for help. I asked him if he just wants to pay inside. He agrees to. He gets his wallet out of his car and then pays $10. I give him his receipt and then he says,
"Can you help me? I don't understand the machine."
And I then say, "We aren't really allowed to leave the store during overnight shifts as it's just me here and it's not safe to go outside." He proceeds to say,
"I don't understand what it's asking me. I need help. I'm not scary."
I tell him once again that I can't go outside because it's a store policy for the overnight shift, and then say, "It's not that you're scary, I just can't go outside." I would have to tell a little old lady the same thing if she was asking for help. Which is true, we can't even take out the trash during overnights. He starts to walk away from the register counter now, but then again stops at the door and asks me one more time to come outside and help him. I'm pretty annoyed at this point. I've said no twice now. I'm not going, so stop asking. I finally say in a super annoyed tone, "Okay, all you need is 1, pick up the nozzle, 2, select fuel grade button, and 3, put it into your tank and squeeze the handle. I'm not going outside." He finally goes back out to the car, and the register tells me that he had no trouble pumping the gas. Also that his plates seem like they're from the state I work in. This kind of thing wouldn't make me suspicious usually, but the fact that he originally opted for me to go outside instead of bringing money inside is pretty weird, along with how he didn't bother to use the pump before he came inside to ask for help, claiming it wasn't working, and him not taking my first no for an answer. No means no. I live in a farming area and there's a lot of fields and woodland, so it's not a hard place to find somewhere to walk my dogs of their leads. About 2 years ago, one evening I completely forgot to walk them, and it was about 8:30. It was in the October half term, so it was already dark, but I wasn't too bothered because I know the whole area really well. So I took my 2 dogs out. I'm a 5'5" girl with quite a bit of muscle on me, as I did a lot of physical sports including martial arts, so I could easily protect myself in a fight. Because of this, I thought I didn't need a torch and thought I was safe. I began walking out my estate and up a hill with my earphones playing some very heavy metal music to get me into the zone for a quick walk on the backfields, and then back home. When I reached the top of the hill, which led to another housing estate bordering the fields, I noticed there was no traffic at all and no movement. At this point it was about 9 and there was nobody to be seen, which I thought was unusual because it's a well-populated area. Besides this, I carried on walking. Once we reached the fields, it was almost pitch black. There were no lampposts, and the only light was from the houses that faced the field. I took my boxer off her leash, and as boxers do, she bounded off into the tall grass like a child, whereas my little mutt followed my heels, nipping my jeans to remind me he's still there. After about 5 or so minutes, my eyes had adjusted to the lighting of the field, and I could see that my boxer had stopped a meter ahead of me, staring at something. Instantly, my other little dog starts growling and stands between my legs. I look up to see a figure standing around 3 meters away from me. I then start to shout for my boxer to come back to me. Reluctantly, she turns to me and begins running to me, my eyes never leaving the figure. I start to call out and apologize for my dogs. I think I said something like, "Sorry, she's just a pup. She thinks everybody wants to play." Nothing, just silence from the figure. I could see that they had long hair and what looked like a raincoat on. The shoulders were wide, but I think it was a woman. Once again, I called out to her, "Are you okay? Did she jump on you?" Again, nothing. At this point, I could literally just feel her eyes on me and my dogs. My littlest dog began barking and squealing, and my boxer began barking this horrifying bark I've never heard her produce. It sounded as if she was trying to threaten the figure. Then, I heard the woman begin laughing malevolently. That's when I lost it. I picked up my little dog and then ran, knowing full well my boxer would follow me. Like I said earlier, I do a lot of sports and I'm really fast and don't have too bad stamina. Jumping over the gate with my dog in my arms and boxer right behind me, I glance over my shoulder and see the woman clear as day in full pursuit. I couldn't give you the exact details. All I can tell you is she looked like something straight out of a scary movie. She was grotesque in every sense of the word. At this point, my boxer was running just a little ahead of me. She knew I was running home and that this woman was bad news. She could have just bolted, but for whatever reason, she kept a speed that matched my own. Maybe it's the dog's loyal instinct of the pack or something. I don't know. Anyways, by the time I had reached the end of the first estate, I slowed down to look behind me. Big mistake. There she still was running. She was quite a distance behind me, but still, she was coming. At this point, my head was complete mush, but I knew if I went down that route that I came to the field from, she would catch up to me. So I darted to the left at the end of the estate and ran across the road down the street. My boxer was right beside me, and at this point my mud had gone silent and was digging his paws into my arms and chest. I ran like I've never ran before. At the end of the street, I turned right, which brought me onto a street next to the opening of my estate. I didn't look behind me until I reached my driveway. I put down my mutts, and he ran with my boxer to the front door of my house. I then looked behind me yet again. She wasn't there anymore, but I could still hear her laughing. So I ran to the door, opened it, and slammed it behind me. Then I bolted it. I turned off the porch light and peered out the little window of the door. She walked straight past me at the end of my driveway. She hadn't seen me. I told my older sister about what happened, and she told me it was best that we didn't tell our dad, as he probably wouldn't let me walk them alone again. Ever since that night, I rarely forget to walk my dogs before it gets dark out, and when I do, I always make sure to walk them first thing in the morning. All of this happened over a couple of years in high school. I'm now 27 and completely over it, but at the time, it was pretty scary. My family and I tell this story all the time as just a funny thing that happened to us, although at the time, it was anything but funny. The lady who lived next door to us moved out, and an older, I would say mid-40s couple moved in. Everything was normal at first. We live in a small town in Canada, so we would always exchange pleasantries with them if we saw them outside, chat about the weather, and that kind of thing. One day in the summer, she came to our door and asked if we would mind paying half for a fence that she wanted to put up between our yards. My dad said it was no problem, but if we went through my uncle, it would be super cheap. She got huffy and didn't want to do that. My dad said that was fair enough, but he was going to get his own quote and would pay half of that. She didn't like that at all, and she stormed off. Things started slowly getting worse, so slow that I hardly noticed it happening. Little things, like during the summertime when my bedroom window was open, I could hear her in her backyard yelling. She would yell at her boyfriend or at my mom or dad. Honestly, sometimes I think she was just yelling at herself. She would have these crazy mood swings where she would one day flip us off as she was getting out of her car, and the next she would run up to my dad being super nice and ask him about our car or our insurance or whatever. We started just assuming that maybe she was bipolar. She was very entertaining for a while. As I said, she would get into screaming matches with her boyfriend, and the cops would always be called. My whole family would watch from our front window. She was clearly drunk a lot. She would drink all day and then call the police or the fire department or an ambulance or something, because for the years that she lived beside us, there were flashing lights outside of her house all the time. My mom and I had a membership at a small gym at the time, and one day she showed up. She acted like she was so glad to see us, big smile and wave, and ran right over to us. We could smell the booze on her, and she kept touching me and telling my mother how beautiful I was. It really creeped my mom and me out. We went and talked to one of the girls there, but before we even brought neighbor lady up, she asked us about her and said that she thought she might be drunk. We confirmed her suspicions and told her that that neighbor lady was drunk a lot. The main issue is that she had driven to the gym, so the lady that worked there called the police when she left and gave them her vehicle's make, model, and license plate number. I honestly don't know what happened with that, but she did get her license taken away eventually, and it could have been from that incident, but more likely it was from a different one. I don't remember 100% what happened, but one night my dad was out shoveling snow and saw a crazy lady pull into her driveway with extensive damage on her car. She pulled it into the garage and stumbled into her house. A little while later, we see cop cars out in front and them escorting her out of the house. After that happened, she would tell my dad unprompted that her car was in the shop or someone was borrowing it, but we could see it in her garage whenever she opened it. Now, I know none of this has been particularly creepy, but it was in the summer that everything escalated. One morning I woke up to the usual screaming in the backyard, but it was my mom screaming at Crazy Lady to leave us the crap alone and not talk to us anymore. I asked my mom what prompted this behavior, and she said the crazy lady was yelling at my dad about our dog peeing on her lawn, and my mom just lost it after that. The very next day, all of the heads of my mother's flowers were cut off. That's when my parents sat me and my sister down and explicitly told us that we were not to speak or go near her no matter what. Unfortunately, not getting a response from us pissed her off even more. One morning, my mom went out to her car to go to work, and she found a picture of our family under her windshield with our faces scratched out so hard that it had torn the paper. It was absolutely horrible to fear going outside at your own home, to be absolutely scared of being accosted by a grown lady when you're 15 or 16. No one should ever feel scared around their own home. That same summer, my dog died. She was around 13 years old, but in perfect health. She was acting really funny one day, so my dad took her to the vet. They couldn't find anything wrong with her at all, but they said they would keep her overnight for observation. That night, I got a horrible feeling, and I begged my mother to let me go see her. She told me that the vet's office was closed and we would go see her in the morning. In the morning, we got a call that she had passed away through the night. My family got that dog when I was around 2 years old, and to this day, it still tears me up sometimes. I loved her so much. That's why when my family started to find these weird circular chalky things on our lawn, I totally freaked out. I was convinced, and still am, that she poisoned our dog. She hated our dog and would always complain about her all the time, and we only found these little discs for about a week following our dog's passing. My family was unconvinced, though I think my dad believed me. He just didn't want to say anything. Think what you will about this, but I still firmly believe that she's the one responsible for our dog's passing. Things went on like this for another year. Her yelling at us, throwing trash on our lawn, flipping us off, fire trucks and ambulance to her house, etc. Then, the glorious day came that we saw a for sale sign on her front lawn. I think our whole family slept a little better that night. She wasn't around much while our house was being shown, and luckily it sold fast. My last part of the story is from the last week she lived there. I had just come home from school and gone into the house. The weather was really nice, so whenever it was like that, I would always leave our front door open and only close the screen door. I was sitting in the living room just relaxing when I saw the crazy lady cross onto our lawn and barge up the stairs. I slid onto the ground and crawled into the kitchen, hoping that she would just go away. She started to knock on our door, but there was no way I was going to answer. I was all alone in the house, and she knew I was home because the door was wide open, and she kept screaming, "Open the door! I know you're in there! Come on!" I crouched in the kitchen, clutching my cordless phone, unsure if I should be calling the police or my dad. She then started rattling the door handle and banging on the door, demanding to be let in. I kept an eye on the back door just in case she came around, because if she did, she would totally be able to see me. My hands were shaking so bad that I had trouble dialing my dad's work number. I told him what was going on through sobs, and he came home. By the time he got there, she was gone. I guess she had given up, but I was still crouched on the kitchen floor, shaking and crying. After that, she finally moved away, and we never heard from her again. The people who moved in are super nice and not crazy at all, unlike her. Oh, I forgot to mention that at one point she started working at the same grocery store I worked at in the same department, but she acted like she didn't even know me. Then when we were both outside at home, she would ask me if I needed a ride, and that she could take me whenever. My mom made me talk to management and get transferred. I also told them about her alcohol problem, and eventually she stopped showing up to work. That woman was definitely crazy, and thank God she moved away from us. So this happened last night and I'm pretty traumatized. Let me start by giving some background info. I'm a college student at a large university living with 4 of my buddies in a house right off our campus. We're in a pretty good part of town, and since there's 4 guys living here, our doors are unlocked pretty much all the time. There's 3 rooms upstairs and my room in the basement. Last night, me and my roommates had some friends over, but the kickback ended pretty early and we were all off to bed by 11 or 12. I fell asleep pretty much the second my head hit the pillow. Around 3 a.m., I wake up and my room is pitch black. I can't see a thing, but I can definitely feel that someone is at the end of my bed touching my feet and moving around the blankets. I'm so freaking confused. At first, I thought maybe it was one of my roommates messing around with me or something, so I reached to my bedside table to find my phone to use as a flashlight. Since it was so dark, it took me a few seconds to find my phone, and the entire time I was searching for it, someone was still grabbing at my feet trying to tickle them. I finally found my phone and turned on the flashlight, and I kid you not, there's a 60-year-old woman who was clearly tweaking on meth standing at the foot of my bed. My blood ran cold as I processed what had just freaking happened, and my body was filled with pure primal terror. I instantly jumped off the side of my bed and shoved her into my dresser as hard as I possibly could, and then I dipped off upstairs to go wake up my roommates. After I shoved her, she started screaming at the top of her lungs. She then ran upstairs and out the back door. My roommates and I ended up calling the cops, and I told them what happened and gave them a description of what she looked like. But they basically told me that there wasn't a whole lot they could do, but they would keep an eye out for anyone who matched the description. So yeah, extremely unhelpful. I'm pretty dang sure that I won't ever be able to sleep normally ever again. And to the woman on meth who grabbed my feet, please, for the love of God, don't come back. I decided to use a Starbucks gift card I got for Christmas this one morning before class. I live in a college town and I wanted to go to the Starbucks closest to campus so I wasn't late to class. The one that I went to doesn't have a drive-thru window, so I had to walk in. When I walked up to the front door, a man and a woman were sitting at the outdoor table and they both made eye contact with me. I remember thinking it was kind of odd because they looked me up and down. Plus, it's like 30 degrees and there were clearly open chairs inside. Come to think of it, I don't think they even had drinks or anything. I walked inside and ordered my drink like normal, but I could still feel them staring at me through the front window. Once I got my drink, I started to walk out to my car, passing the 2 people. I heard both of them stand up and start walking behind me without saying a word. I got really scared and put my keys in between my knuckles just in case I needed to protect myself. I then sped up and got into my car as fast as I could and locked all the doors. Not even 2 seconds later, the woman knocked aggressively on my driver's side window, essentially making me almost piss myself. The man was right next to her with a straight face. He had his hands in his pockets and was looking through the window of my car as if he was searching for something. I decided to crack the window like a centimeter so she couldn't fit her hand in or anything, and I asked her if she needed anything. She told me to roll the window down some more. I just said that it was really cold, so I'm going to keep it up. Then she asked me if I could give them some money, and she seemed like she was insisting, not so much asking. I just stumbled over my words and told her that I paid with a gift card. I also mentioned that I'm a poor college kid who didn't even have cash. The man started to look confused and angry at me, and he yelled at me to get out of the car. That's when I noped the crap out of there and drove away as fast as I could. I'm really glad I got out of there, but they scared the crap out of me. I probably shouldn't have even talked to them at all. So, to the 2 people who I think tried to rob me at Starbucks, if you ever see me again, please stay away from me. Let's just start off with I'm a 20-year-old female, and 4 years ago I was a high school junior working at a Chick-fil-A. I was also ridiculously stupid and naive. So about 4 years ago I started my very first job at Chick-fil-A, and for some reason my first and last name was on my name tag. Anyways, I apparently took this guy's order named Scott, and he memorized my name and looked me up on Facebook. I very stupidly added him because it said he went to my high school at the time. Well, he sends me a message, and I quickly find out that he has not only graduated high school, but has also graduated from college. Now, at the time I was like, oh, this isn't that weird. But now that I'm actually in college, I find it very strange that a 22-year-old was hitting on a 16-year-old. Anyways, so we're talking, and he tries to take me out on a date to an orchestra concert that's over an hour away from my house. I was at least smart enough to reject this idea. For the next couple of weeks, he keeps messaging me, and I keep messaging back for a while. He started asking some really personal questions about my age, sexuality, and other stuff, but usually our conversations were very platonic. He still always commented on my looks and how attractive he found me. I slowly stopped talking to him and didn't give him another thought. Then my graduation rolls around and he messages me again. He's still trying to get me to go out on a date with him, but he refuses to tell me where, so obviously I refuse. So now I've completely forgotten about him until recently. I currently work in a resource lounge for students in a student center for my college. One day I was working and an older guy with grayish hair comes up and says he needs some help. I then help him and I ask him to put it into the computer system, and he tells me it's Scott. My mind started racing, wondering if it was really him, and sure enough, Scott decided to go back to get another bachelor's degree at my college. That's not completely weird, but I found it odd that he chose my college, and he chose to go to the resource center where I work at during the hours I work. What a big coincidence, so I'm still not that convinced that this is weird yet. Well, being a college student, I also work at a retail store on the weekends, and I'm pretty much guaranteed to work every Sunday. Well, one Sunday he just comes in and just walks around and doesn't buy anything. He then makes eye contact with me before walking out. Okay, odd. Next Sunday, he comes in and just walks around again and again doesn't buy anything. He looks at me again and then walks out. Now, after a few more times of this, I unfriended him on Facebook and just hope everything is just a big giant coincidence. But he quickly realizes that I unfriend him and tries to friend me again, and then again 2 days later. I finally blocked him, but I have a weird feeling that he has really bad intentions. I don't really know what to think. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. And if you have your own personal scary story, be sure to submit that to my subreddit at reddit.com/r/southerncannibal or to my email at southerncannibal@gmail.com. I'm always looking for new stories. And before we bring this video to a close, I just want to shout out all of my $5 or more patrons, as well as my $3 or more patrons featured on screen. Shout out to Babe Lincoln, Beth A, Kate E, Celeste S, Ellie S, Emily W, Heather B, Howard R, Jacqueline W, Jazzy G, Jonathan C, Lori J, Matthew B, Michael G, Random Randy, Steph L, Tammy S, and Terry H. Thank all of you so much for supporting me on Patreon. I really appreciate it more than you know. And if any of you would like to join these awesome people and also become a patron, head over to my Patreon at patreon.com/southerncannibal. Thank you everyone, and have a good one. And remember to always stay